Hello and welcome to day 26 of 100 Days of Soulforce. My name is Joseph Arnold. So have you ever noticed that when you perform or you practice, you're playing something, or I don't know, even just washing your dishes or brushing your teeth, you're just using too much tension in your body? You know, it could be your shoulders hunching up or your jaw clenching or your back getting tight or any number of things. Maybe your hands get tired, or you lose your voice, or you have even some kind of injuries like I had. So this is a really common thing, and most of the people who come see me for lessons have these kinds of issues and are hungry for more and more ways to help release tension. And you know, what I'm most curious about is not just how to relax, because relaxation is nice. I like relaxation, but you can't like play a concerto when you relax like this, in this way. And so what we're going to be doing today is going a little bit deeper on the difference between the doing mode and the receiving mode. You can check out my other video on that recently. And this is one of the most effective ways of, or entering into the receiving mode is one of the most effective ways of releasing all of that kind of excess tension, even when you're doing something really difficult, like playing music or reciting Shakespeare, or I don't know, I guess washing your dishes or brushing your teeth isn't so difficult, but like, why are you holding all that tension while you're doing that? So you can learn how to let go of that, and it's quite simple. So we're going to do a little recap of the difference between the doing mode and the receiving mode, and then I'm going to show you 3 or 4 different ways of entering further into the receiving mode. Okay, so before we get further into that, I'm going to say a little bit more about myself. I'm Joseph Arnold. I'm a violinist, an Alexander Technique teacher, and the founder of the Soulforce Arts Academy. And a big part of how to express Soulforce in what you do, and that's the point of the Soulforce Arts Academy. I think this is what everybody really wants as a performer, and what your audience really wants to receive is your Soulforce, the power of who you are, that deep kind of expressivity, soulful expressivity. And a massively important part of that is learning how to get out of the way of yourself. Learning how to go beyond giving mechanical kinds of performances, or performances where you feel like you're just really not reaching your full potential. Either your body feels awkward, or your sound just isn't that great, or it's just something's not connecting while you're playing or dancing, whatever. So yeah, so this is why I focus so much on something like the doing mode versus the receiving mode. And a lot of this comes from my training as an Alexander Technique teacher. So here we go. The doing mode versus the receiving mode. The doing mode, it feels like you're inside your head, peering out your eyes, acting upon the world. That's what it feels like. And it can feel very effortful. Like the source of agency is inside your head, and it goes in a linear direction out this way. And when at first things don't work, you just try harder and harder and harder. You get tighter and tighter as you try harder. So yeah, let's have a little demonstration of that. We'll do a little exercise here where you put your fingertips together back and forth like this. Okay, see if you can really get them to line up and not miss the very tips of those fingers, okay? And maybe go just a little bit faster. You better get that right, getting those tips of those fingers right on there. Okay, so notice your body while you're doing this. Are you getting tighter or freer? And is your head moving towards your hands or away from your hands? Okay, so I notice my body getting tighter, my head going towards my hands. Okay, now the antidote to the doing mode is the receiving mode. So let's do the same thing. The receiving mode feels more like your body, the mind-body being an open circuit completed by the world. So it's much more receptive, much more open. Like you and the world complete each other. So let's try that here. Just think of receiving your hands as your fingertips do this. So you can receive your fingertips, receive this movement. And just notice, does that make a difference to your quality of movement? Do you get tighter or freer? Does your head tend to move more away from your hands or closer to your hands? So I noticed that my body was definitely freer that time. And my head tended to release away from my hands. And that's very characteristic of the receiving mode. So we're going to do some more variations on this, and this is the meat of the lesson today. I have some turmeric tea here, excuse me. Oh, that's good stuff. Okay. So there are various kinds of receiving. Let's do, we're going to focus on sensory receiving today. Receiving your senses in various ways. So let's start with the kinesthetic sense and tactile sense. This is your body movement sense. Kinesthetic has to do with where your body is in space, like how you know that you're sitting right now or standing, or I can wiggle my fingers. How do I know that I'm wiggling my fingers? It's my kinesthetic sense. It's how you can get your fork to your mouth without having to look the whole time. Right? So as you do this movement again, you can think of receiving the sensory information, because our nervous system has basically two different parts in terms of movement and sensation. There's the afferent nerves, which send movement signals, and the efferent nerves, which receive sensory input, and both are happening at the same time. But what we're going to focus on right now is the receiving the sensory input. Those receiving nerves, the efferent nerves, don't reach out to grab sensations. They receive sensations. Okay? So why don't you do this again and just think of receiving the sensations of your fingers and your hands here. Let those sensations come to you. Let them come to you. You don't have to go out to get them. Maybe even receive the rest of your body as you do this. Okay. So that's one mode of receiving sensory information from your body. So I noticed that time that I was even more at ease in myself. I hope you noticed the same. So let's do hearing. This is not a auditory activity here, but many performing artists do things with auditory activity, so we might as well bring a little bit of that in here. So again, the same thing applies. You can't push your ear out to hear better. The sound waves come to your ear. You can't grab sounds with your ear or your attention. It's a receiving. So let's do the same activity. And this time, receiving sounds. Just let the sounds come to you. Whatever sounds you hear around you. Yeah, it's so nice because I can hear the birds outside. It feels very peaceful. So again, what do you notice? Just receiving sounds, even though you're doing a finger thing. Does that make a difference for your body? Okay, our next mode of receiving is sight. Oftentimes it can feel like we're trying to poke at things with our eyes, or grab a visual something with our eyes. And if you're driving down the highway and there's a sign a quarter mile down the road and you go like that, like moving your head forward an inch isn't going to make any difference. Especially if you're going 60 miles an hour, it's just kind of nonsensical to do that. It's an artifact of the doing mode. Remember, the doing mode, your head goes towards that which you are paying attention to. So, but seeing is receiving. The light hits your retina. You can't go out and grab the light with your eyes. So let's do this. The light coming off your fingers is hitting your retina, and you don't have to do anything about that. You're just receiving the light, receiving the visual sensation. Your whole visual field is happening without you doing anything about it. And notice your tendency to get sort of sucked into your fingertips there. Maybe you can even include your peripheral vision, just kind of listening to your vision almost. Yeah, I notice I have a particularly strong habit of grabbing with my eyes. I really wanted to see those fingertips, but when I received the vision, received the light more, my hands got softer. One more form of receiving that I've talked a lot about in these 100 Days of Soulforce so far is playing from the heart. Playing from the heart is definitely receiving mode. And there's a kind of listening that happens when you're playing from the heart, or when you enter the receiving mode in general, that is what your audiences want to hear. It sounds kind of funny to say it, but your audiences want to hear your listening. That's what they want. It's hard even to put into words. It's kind of like the difference between being talked at and having a conversation with somebody. Nobody likes to be talked at. But when you're with somebody who's a really sensitive listener, that can be really satisfying. Right? So the same goes when you're up on stage. If you can be a sensitive listener, that's going to be much more satisfying for your colleagues and for your audience. And it's going to be way better for your body too. You'll be much more at ease receiving your colleagues up on stage, receiving the audience, receiving the sheet music if you're a musician reading sheet music. The light is coming off the stand to your retina. You don't have to squeeze your eyes to see. Other examples of receiving movement, receiving smells and tastes, receiving the sounds from your colleagues, receiving your own sound, receiving the impulses of your inner audience member, receiving the sight of the conductor, receiving ideas for improvisation, receiving the sight and the sounds of your audience, receiving your students, if you're a teacher, receiving your reactions to people, all kinds of things. And what you might notice is that the more you receive, the more you sense your interbeingness with the world. Again, you can go back and check out my earlier videos on interbeing and the 6 pillars of Soulforce. And there's this sense of being, like, participating with the world, participating rather than being a separate monad in the world, a separate self in a world of other. Rather, you receive yourself in the world. And yeah, again, there's that great Merleau-Ponty quote that I keep coming back to. The mind-body is an open circuit completed by the world. Yeah. We work better when we function, when we move and act in the world in accordance with how our body, mind actually functions. So this is why we get more at ease when we are in the receiving mode. Okay, so be sure to subscribe to this channel if you'd like to receive more of this, or hit that like button. And you can sign up for my newsletter. I do a monthly newsletter with some blog posts. I have a blog at josepharnold.com. I have a book coming out, hopefully by the summer of 2022. I keep typing away on that, called Soulforce Arts, Redefining Artistic Performance, Practice and Pedagogy in a World That's Lost Its Mind. So if you sign up for the newsletter, you get early access, some perks maybe. We'll see. Okay, see you tomorrow.